Hello, welcome to section 6 of unit 3 of international procurement. Today, we'll be looking at contract administration and closeouts and vendor relationship management. By the end of this section, you should be able to understand the meaning and type of procurement contract and its core elements. Again, you should be able to understand the types of performance review monitoring methods in international procurement and understand the importance of vendor relationship management and the type of relationships. And finally, you must be able to be familiar with the contract completion and closeout activities. A contract is a legally binding agreement that recognizes and governs the rights and duties of a party to an agreement. So as we already know, we have that a contract is always formed on the basis of an offer and acceptance. So in the context of procurement, it's a written document containing the agreement and the terms and conditions between the organization and the suppliers and which serve as a proof of obligation. So in the context of procurement, it's an agreement or a written agreement between the suppliers and the buyers of the item in question to be delivered. Basically that. So contract finalization is a process followed by the procurement officer to form a written contract with the supplier. So it's the final process in which the contract is penned down or written. So the purpose of the contract finalization is to ensure that all proper elements are in place to conduct a written agreement that protects the interests of both parties or that protects the interests of organizations and reflects that the offer made by the supplier in response to the requirement presented by the organization. So a contract usually includes the following at its finalization or issuance and issuance days. So it should be clear, complete description of the work. So the clear and complete description of the work. Again, the price, the basis of payments, and then the method of payments. Also the schedule of activities or delivery dates, and then the reference of solicitation documents. All of these documents must be engulfed in the contract finalizing and issuance. So we look at some types of contracts. So procurement contracts are made on the basis of payment and includes a fixed price sum contract, a unit price contract, and reimbursable costs contracts or combinations thereof. So a fixed lump sum contract. The supplier agrees to perform the work for one fixed price regardless of the ultimate cost. So basically here suppliers give specific specific amounts or a fixed price that this is what we are going to work with, and that is going to be our final price irrespective of any ultimate changes of or any ultimate cost that may come at the end. So payments are linked to output or deliverables such as reports, drawings, and bills of quantities, etc. So lump sum contracts are easy to administer because payments are due on clearly specified output. So just as we said earlier, so it is lump sum contracts are easily to administer because we just agree on the price that okay you charge 1,000 cedis. So no matter what comes up, it is 1,000 cedis you give or you receive as a supplier. Again, we come to the unit price contract. So it's a contract where the supplier agrees to supply goods, services, or works at a fixed unit price per rate, and the final price is dependent on the quantities needed to carry out the work. So basically, this one talks about specific unit price. So if it is a contract of provision of service of chairs, then we are charging on per unit. Every chair may cost, let's say, 10 cedis. So if you are charging, we'll charge you for 20 chairs, we'll charge you 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 for 20. So that will be for unit price. This type of contract is suitable when it's impossible due to the nature of the service work to determine with to determine with sufficient precision and quantity of service. So basically, for unit price contracts, it is mostly contracts of quantity that suppliers may want to use unit pricing um, strategies or unit pricing um, um, systems. So basically, for the unit price, this type of contract is suitable, as I mentioned earlier, for the um, sufficiency and precision of quantity of goods, works, and service. And we come to cost reimbursable contracts. So cost reimbursable contracts are recommended only in exceptional circumstances such as conditions of high risk or where costs cannot be determined in advance with sufficient accuracy. So such contracts should include appropriate incentives to limit cost. Example, ceiling price. So for example, we say that um, due to risk or due to uncertain on due to risk or due to unforeseen circumstances, organizations may want to enter into cost reimbursable contracts. So here it is based on incentives on what may go wrong or what may not go wrong. But because of that, there's always that I mean incentive type of costing where we limit the cost to a price ceiling. So let's say we will say the highest you can go is 1,000 cedis, giving like a threshold. So the supply of cost reimbursable contracts is carried by the buyer as the supplier has no incentives to control cost or to finish early or in time. So the buyer has to closely monitor and manage the contracts. So the risk of cost reimbursable contracts, as I mentioned earlier, is carried out by the buyer. So as the supplier has no incentive of control costs or to finish early on time. So the supplier, it is just, when he or she finishes, that's when he or she counts for his money. But then for the risk of cost reimbursable contracts, it's mostly borne by the buyer because there may be changes in prices and that may affect your cost if not added to your budgets. So we come to performance reviews. So once the contract has been awarded, using any of the pricing arrangements, it is the responsibility of the procurement officer to monitor performance, collect information, and measure actual contract achievements. This is essential for effective control. So the resource devoted to these tasks and the techniques used to perform them will depend on the nature of the contract work, the size and complexity of the contract, and the resources available. So basically, we look at some performance reviews. When we talk of performance as procurement persons, we cannot eliminate KPI, the key performance indicators. So they stand in as some measurements, measurements and evaluation model or tool that is used to measure performance of organizations. So the KPI for supplier performance. So you see it has success factors and then the sample KPI. So based on which sample KPI may you use to, let's say, assess this person. So if we talk about price, that's to say success factor being price, then it means we should use the basic purchase price, the whole life cost of ownership, value, and percentage of cost reduction. So if all of these elements are in good shape, then we could say that okay, the organization is perform in accordance to price. Then we come to quality or compliance. So rejection, error of waste rates, number of customer compliance, adherence to quality standards, and police. So that one is also for quality. So delivery, we see frequency of late, incorrect or incomplete delivery, percentage of in time, in full, OTIF deliveries. So basically, all of these things are some sample KPIs we use to um, measure the success factors. So if you are talking about financial abilities or stabilities, ability to meet financial commitments and claims, again the ability to maintain quality and deliverables. All of these fall under um, key performance um, indicators, or let me say types of performance review monitoring methods. Again, so we come to some of the types of performance review or monitoring methods. So there are two main different monitoring methods. That's the observation and indirect observation. So direct observation and indirect observation. So for indirect observation, for monitoring, it refers to checking progress reports from many observers, technical reviews, performance indicators, and audits. Indirect observation is appropriate whenever direct observations provide insufficient or ambiguous information. So, for example, I mean, sometimes the um, direct observations, which we are yet to come to that, proves fatal or proves insufficient because everybody knows that okay, this is how we are being observed directly. They then tend to give cosmetics behavior at the times of those observations. But for indirect observations where you get to mingle with the suppliers, get to know that okay, use some form of technical reviews or observing what they are doing to have an indirect observation or an indirect monitoring on the suppliers is also, a type of performance review, and that's the direct observation approach is most practical when work is physically in nature and performed at the limited number of sites. So for direct observation, it's like you know in an examination hall, you know there is some form of direct observation that invigilators on you. So that one you may be tempted to, comport yourself. But after you walked out of the examination hall and then you are walking about, you may feel that there's no one on you um, as an examination invigilator. So you just move about freely. But then if they still want to observe your movement, then it would mean that they would have to follow you keenly and know what you are capable of or what you are not. So for um, monitoring methods, the indirect one or the indirect observation is the one that do not come in physically, but then the one that um, technical reviews and performance. Many observations are done when the direct one proves insufficient. So it's in addition to the direct observation. Then we come to inspection. So inspection also involves examining or testing a product or service, to ensure that it conforms to contract requirements. So we are just inspecting, I mean, um, or testing the product or service to ensure that they conform to quality criteria. So where quantities of goods are involved, inspections also means verifying that the correct number of items has been delivered. So that is what we mean by inspection. So you are just inspecting to see that whatever you have conforms to the contract requirements. Then we come to sensory and dimensional checks. So this here involves the use of an inspector's eye ear, and other sense in making a personal judgment. For a commercially available contract pencil sharpener, for example, for a commercially available atomic pencil sharpener, for example, this method reviews surface defects, missing pieces, noisy operations, and or parts of and parts and parts out of alignment. So it involves making a visual examination to verify that the proper type and kind of product has been delivered. That is, that is, the product or service conforms to the specification outlined in order or contract. So for sensory and dimensional checks, that's where you use an inspector's eye or ear and offer a sense of making a personal judgment. So here is more like a direct observation, but here it is a sensory and dimensional check where you use your personal judgment, but then you use an inspector's eye and an ear to understand whatever thing that they have bought, and then if that thing that procurement has purchased is in line with the public procurement at all, again is in line with the specification as identified in the contracts. Then we come to physical or performance tests. So for physical or performance tests, um, this provides actual performance data that are compared with required performances or physical characteristics or range of what is considered acceptable according to the contract. So requiring that a motor runs or an operating system performs at a certain level for a specific period of time is an example of performance test. So by performance test, for example, as we've already stated with cars. So when people buy cars or these machinery, they want to put it to test the performance test where they ride, let's say, to some form of kilometers and come back and then have a feel of the car before purchases are made. So physical or performance test is the actual performance data that are compared with required performance. So if let's say you stated in your um, specification that you want a car that can travel, let's say 360 miles per hour. So then if the car comes, you have to test to see if we can really travel 360 miles per hour. Then we come to destructive test. So this requires that end products meet certain reliabilities standards or withstand a specific level of stress. So, for example, destructive tests are test is like you are testing bulletproofs. So you see bulletproof, you may have to shoot to it to see if it would be destroyed or not. Again, heating a product until it burns, test that the fireproof characteristics of an end product. Yes. So you have an iPhone and then they say it's waterproof. When you dip it in water and then you pick it and it's still working, then it is what we term as destructive tests. So the impact of vendor relationship management. So organizations that have more strategic goals or services that require ongoing interfaces with a supplier will use a supplier relationship management process. So closer relationships are driven in part by supplier chain management, early supply involvement, and purchasing alliances. Cultivating the right relationship with business is paramount, and hence a number of forces influence the development of relationship between business partners. For relevant factors are, availability of alternatives. If I cannot get what I'm getting from you from anywhere, then I'll be stuck with you. I may build a relationship with you. Importance of the supply. So importance of the item that I need from you can also influence the decision. Complexity of the market. The marketing which you are working on. If that market is very complex, then that could also warrant some form of relationship building. And then the supply market dynamics or dynamism is also another um, point that is in line with complexity of the supplier or supplier market. So based on these, Kotler and Keller classify buyer-supplier relationship into 8 categories. So for one, basic buying and selling. So these are simple routine exchange with moderate level of cooperation and information exchange. So basically, I just come, I buy, and I go. It mostly refers to the stats of where you bought, specific items. Then it came to barebone. That is, this relationship requires more adaptation by the seller and less cooperation and information. So here, there's more adaptation by the seller and less cooperation by the less cooperation and information exchange. So it is like it is the seller that is very much interested in this one. So as it says that the relationship requires more adaptation by the seller. So there's the seller that is trying to adapt into this relationship, and hence there's the name barebone. Then contractual transactions. These exchanges are defined by formal contracts and generally have low level of trust, cooperation, and interactions. So these exchanges, when it comes to the contractual transactions, are defined as the formal contracts and generally have low levels of trust. So there's no level of trust, I mean, at this point, still on the transactional level. Then we come to customer supply. In this traditional custom supply situation, competition rather than cooperation is the dominant form of governance. So there's competition rather than communication. Then I come to cooperative systems. So the partners in cooperative systems are united in operational ways, but neither demonstrates structural commitments through legal means or adaptation. So there's also another way where it's like they are shifting from being one-time purchases to cooperative systems. So the partners in cooperative system are united in operational ways, but neither demonstrate structural commitment through legal means or adaptation. So for um, corporations that I mean corporate systems are united in operational ways. So for operational bits, they are united, but when it comes to commitments, that one they are not for it. Then we come to collaboration. So after the collaborative systems, then they come to collaboration. So in collaborative exchanges, much trust and commitment leads to true partnership or true friendship. So there's the need, or I mean suppliers and buyers build much trust at this point, and again mutually adaptive. We move to the next point. Buyers and sellers make many relationship specific adaptation, but without necessarily achieving strong trust or cooperation. So when there is mutually adaptiveness, then both buyers and sellers may make some relationship specific adaptations, but without necessarily achieving strong trust or cooperation. And customer is king. In this close, in this close cooperative relationship, the seller adapts to meet the customer's needs without expecting much adaptation or change in each customer. The closeout process ensures that all contract obligations have been met. And here we look at contract completion and closeout. And by the time all these contract obligations have been met, such as warranties have been discussed, guarantees have been, after sales services and support services, everything has been discussed, then it is clearly defined the terms of responsibility, liability, and procedure of the time frame. So, I mean, then it becomes like responsibility has been shared upon. So if this thing happens, this person will be liable and all that. So contract closeout occurs once all contractual obligations have been fulfilled by the supplier. For the lower value contracts, contract closeout activities are generally fairly straight. However, the complex ones, it is, just as the name connotes, very complex to involve yourself in. So in a complex and higher dollar value contract involving progress, payments and or securities, is more detailed and documented before you can close out your, or you can complete your school, or you can complete the projects. Let me put it that way. So in this section, we looked at meaning and type of procurement contract and its core elements, type of performance review, monitoring methods in international procurement, importance of vendor relationship management, and the type of relationship, contract completion and close out activities.